So, okay, one thing which you probably know about me, my favorite genre or my favorite subgenre is time travel fiction. I am such a sucker for time travel stories, time travel movies. I hope we get to do some time travel movies on the Two Reel because I've got so many great time travel movies from before that I would like to kind of work in.
Oh, good.
But I was talking to a friend a few months ago, earlier this year. I was explaining, I love time travel stories. Have you read anything you can recommend? And he recommended me a couple of books. Recursion by Blake somebody, which was kind of fine. But the other one that I really enjoyed. So
Wait a second. His
Yep.
last name is somebody? Blake somebody? I just
No,
wrote that down.
no. But if I'd been better prepared for the pod, I would have looked this one up.
You sound like me.
So, so Recursion by Blake somebody.
Yeah.
Nothing but professionalism on this podcast. Look, but the book was fine. The book
Better
was,
than Blake nobody, right?
This is the point I'm trying to make here, which is that the other book my friend recommended was Kindred by Octavia Butler, which was great. Kindred is like a science fiction book from the 1970s about a woman in the 1970s who finds herself kind of uncontrollably slipping through time into like Confederate America. And because the woman is black, the moment that she arrives in the past, she immediately becomes a slave. And she is unable to really control when she slips into the past and when she slips back out of the past into the present day. It's a great book. It's a dismal book insofar as a whole bunch of absolutely terrible, dreadful, awful things happen to her. But it's very well written, eye-opening, well plotted, very interesting, fascinating. And so I thought I would kind of look up a little bit about Octavia Butler and Kindred, which is how I came across. Somebody pointed out, this is an important book in the field of the movement of Afrofuturism. Which I had never heard of, I'm afraid. I am putting my hands up and admitting my ignorance. So I had to kind of look up that, and I feel like Afrofuturism kind of ties into the movies that we've done on the last pod.
Yeah.
My immediate thought was that Afrofuturism, okay, well, that's science fiction featuring black characters. Am I right? And it turns out, kind of no, it's not. It's not kind of black science fiction. It's more nuanced and complex than that. The best definition I could find is it's literature or art about a science fictional future in which black people have overcome. So it's a kind of an optimistic black future history in a science fiction sort of form. Apparently, the term was first coined by Mark Deary in a 1994 essay called "Black to the Future," but I think it's a phenomenon which has existed before then. As far as Afrofuturism in cinema goes, I think the current poster child is Black Panther.
Yeah.
But did you see Black Panther?
I did, yeah. It's about
So this is like one of the Marvel films that you did see, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Hey.
It wasn't my idea, but I did go. Yeah, I was taken to it. Yes, and I teach in a really multiracial high school, and the cinema was right down the street from us, so it was playing, and we were really encouraging kids to see it because it's the first time they saw black superheroes on screen.
Right. Yeah.
And then I saw it with family, I think, and yes, it's true. I don't see many Marvel films because I'm just not that interested in them, but I did see Black Panther. And there are things that I loved about it, and maybe one or two things that I really didn't like. I mean, I loved Wakanda. I loved the advanced society. I loved all that. The only thing I didn't like really is the way that the Black Panther was chosen. It was just the classic, I'm going to beat the shit out of the other, my opponent on a waterfall. And it just,
that's no way to run a government, is it?
Well, yeah, exactly. And it just felt like this culture is so advanced, but why are they still, deciding their leader based on violence and, who's going to beat up the other one? So that was the one, I felt like that undercut a lot of the story for me, but otherwise, fantastic film. I did like that one a lot.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, this is it's so obvious it's barely worth talking about. But the most fantastic thing about Black Panther was to see a film which was like a really big budget, very lavish, very expensive film. Someone had spent an awful lot of money
Yeah.
on a film, and basically all the characters are black. And
Yeah.
it's not that you have a black character because he's the best friend of the white guy who's the main character.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Just it's fantastic.
Yeah, not an
You know,
afterthought. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. How refreshing. Going through my kind of memory banks, I did watch a little Vox video that was trying to explain what Afrofuturism is,
Yeah.
and in that, the narrator points out that of the top 100 top-grossing science fiction and fantasy films, only 8 had black protagonists, and 4 of those were Will Smith.
Oh, really? Yeah. Wow.
So I was struggling to think, oh well, okay, which other films I've seen might fit this kind of Afrofuturist template, and the
Yeah.
only other one I could really think of was The Matrix.
Yeah. Okay.
Insofar as, well, yeah, there are a lot of prominent characters who are people of color
Yeah.
in The Matrix, and it's not just kind of like sort of comedy best friend.
Yeah.
Morpheus is the leader of the gang, and so the Matrix I feel kind of fits into that mold,
Hmm.
except the Matrix is largely dystopian again, isn't it? Still, so it still doesn't feel like a science fiction future where black people have at last, been allowed, a few happy years.
Yeah.
It's black people are still being oppressed.
Yeah.
Now it's not by white people. Now it's by machines that are doing the work of the white people. But it's still not good news. I think Afrofuturism is something which is more prevalent in literature. Is that right?
I agree with you. Like my experience with Afrofuturism in film is almost non-existent. But I, like you, have been on an Octavia Butler sort of binge lately. So I've read 3 books in the last probably 6 months or something. So
Whoa!
I read Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talent. So those 2 are companions. I think there was supposed to be a 3rd book she was going to write on the parables, but she died quite young, actually. 2005 or 6, I think. She just fell and hit her head, and
Oh man!
she was at the height of her powers when she died. And then we also read among our teachers A Wild Seed, which it's interesting because it turns things around because there's enslavement. It covers sort of, there are these 2 sort of, boy, what are they? They're sort of immortal characters, and they have a lot of powers. But one of them, named Doro, is an enslaver himself. So he's a black enslaver, and he can occupy any body he wants. He can basically just, if one body is sort of wearing out, getting old, he just jumps into another body. He has to kill someone to do it, but he jumps into another body, and he's got these slave colonies all around the world, all around Africa and the United States, and it sort of takes place in the 1600s, the 1800s, and I think maybe sometime ends up in the early 1900s or something like that. So it sort of goes 100 or so years at a time. It might be 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. So it's a tiny bit of his life, but he is actually the one who enslaves people. So it just sort of turns the tables entirely. And the world isn't that much better or worse, but it's just that the power structure changes. So she just turns things on their heads, and it's powerful in that way. The parable books are really, they're also Afrofuturism, but a lot of those characters are actually Latino. It's really multiracial. So in a lot of her work, there is this sort of post-racist society that she develops. She develops communities, and they're almost always like mixed gender, mixed race, mixed language, multilingual. So she's envisioning a world without racism, but there's still all of these, I think, these after effects of racism. She doesn't shy away from that at all. So she's very honest about stuff. So I think in her work, she does get a little bit beyond the racism of like earlier literature, but she definitely does not just dispense with it. She definitely, it's there, but she's sort of trying to envision cultures that get beyond that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
So I love this kind of science fictional idea of post-racism.
Yeah.
And I'm sure as a boy in the 1980s, I was confident that was the society we would be living in 2022. Oh yeah, we'll be post-racist now.
Yeah.
And I can't believe how very badly we have missed that goal.
Yes.
Star Trek, I think, probably. I guess, can you squeeze that into the Afrofuturist camp? At least as far as Nichelle Nichols.
Yeah.
being, an icon for having like the role that she did on that show.
Yeah.
That was probably a bit of an eye opener. Going back to other literary proponents, I have read a book by Samuel Delany. I think Babel 17, which is like a sort of crazy psychedelic book about sort of people being controlled by language, I think. And then M.K. Jemison is a kind of very prominent writer of color who's kind of hoovering up the kind of the nebulas and the awards,
Yeah.
On a regular basis. So as far as literature goes, Afrofuturism is alive and well. The other place where I think it has a role is in video games as well. Actually, Deathloop was a kind of a big PS5 video game released last year, I think, about 12 months ago, where both the main protagonist and the main antagonist are black characters, and no one's making a big thing of it. It's just that here we are. We've arrived in this kind of science fictional future where we can comfortably have two main black characters, and no one's going to make a big thing about it. Your idea of a kind of a post-racist society, that also reminds me a bit of Mass Effect, which is like a big epic series of science fictional role-playing games that were kind of out a few years ago, which again has this kind of fantastic promise about people being exactly kind of very multicultural, sort of multigender, pansexual. It's kind of this halcyon future where people don't judge you on what you look like. And yet, strangely, we're still waiting for that.
Yeah. I think the perspective that strikes me is the fact that we've always been in a dystopia. I think that's the thing, is we assume that the dystopia is in the future with a lot of white science fiction, that things are going to go Big Brother, go 1984, whatnot. But I think coming from the black experience, a lot of these writers and artists realize, oh no, we're still in dystopia. We've come through dystopia. We're still in dystopia. So I think that's the perspective that, if you grow up privileged and white, you don't think of this as being a dystopia. You think of this as, this is a pretty cool world we live in right now. I've got all I need. Whereas that's not the truth for the entire population of the planet. So I think that's what it is. It's like acknowledging past and current dystopia and not just placing it in the future. So that's something that Butler does great. And with time travel, she can do that. She can take you to the dystopias of the past as well as into the future. But with that book, Wild Seed, it's all in the past. It's all in the American past. But very dystopic. Or do we say dystopic? Dystopic, I guess.
Dystopic.
Yeah.
Dystopic.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's a word.
Yeah,
it's a
sure.
word now.
So right. I mean, what we need to see is more of it. I mean, I'm underexposed to it as a literary or as a cinematic genre. We need to see more of it. I think that's the biggest stumbling block.
Going to see Nope at the cinema. Two of the trailers. A big trailer for the new Black Panther film.
Okay,
so that's a proper slice of high budget Afrofuturism right there. But also trailer for a new film called The Woman King, which is one of a film about a past dystopia. It's a film about colonialism and a black nation resisting European settlers in what looks like, I'm guessing, the 18th century, something like that.
Okay. Sounds good.
So there is some penetration into kind of mainstream cinema.
Yeah. I
hope we see a bit more.
Well,
I'd like to see that. That'd be good.
The cynic in me thinks, okay, this is an untapped movie audience, though, as well. Like these, it's just about getting more people into the theater. So that's super cynical, but I think it's possibly part of it, yeah. As a consumer environment, yeah.
But if a film is commercial, it doesn't automatically mean it's not good. It's possible to make, good. I mean, Black Panther made $1 billion, didn't it?
Probably. Wow, billion. Yeah,
I think it probably did make $1 billion. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like such a ludicrous made-up number, like it's invented by a child. And actually, it's like a real financial figure.
No, you can say that. Yeah.
So yeah, it is possible to make films that are both successful and good,
I think
and of value.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing to aim for, is it? That's not a bad thing to aim for.
I'd love to see it. More. Bring on more.